Hello, hi, I am Olivia, Senior Bookkeeper and Certified QuickBooks Pro Advisor, and the owner of Profits and Books Bookkeeping Services, where we offer bookkeeping, of course, and marketing for small businesses. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I would absolutely be happy if you could like and subscribe and of course share this video. Today we are going to talk about an emergency fund, what it is, why you need it, and the difference that it could make. We have all heard about an emergency fund, but what is confusing is what is the difference between an emergency fund and a savings fund? And there is a difference because an emergency fund is exactly what it says. It's a fund for when an emergency comes. It's not part of your savings fund because with your saving, you are saving for a goal, whether it's to have money, whether it's to go on holiday, to buy a car, to save up for a deposit of a house, whatever it is that you are saving for, that is your savings fund or your savings. Then you have your emergency fund. And look, let's be realistic. For most of us, when you hear the word saving, your first thought or emotion that comes, it's rejection and frustration because you say, but I don't even have enough money to cover my needs. How on earth am I going to save? So the same goes for the emergency fund. You don't jump up and down like, yay, I'm going to save. No, you don't do that. You need to have a conversation with yourself and then you start making your sums because money is technical. Money is personal and it's emotive. So when it comes to your emergency fund, it is to cover those unexpected expenses, medical bills, things that break, unexpected expenses, that anything that smells or look like an emergency. We all know most of us have gone through the feeling where you or that situation where you have enough money for the month. You finally manage to save a few cents, a few rands, and your savings account is looking up. You know, your debt is in order, your money is flowing, and then an emergency happens. And what do? And most emergencies, it's your health, your car, your house. Then what do? Then you have to dip into your savings or you have to go and borrow money to cover this emergency. So when you have a fund available for these unexpected expenses, it relieves the load of you because money can put such a burden on you if you don't have it. It's the weirdest thing. The less money you have, the heavier you feel. The more money you have, the lighter and energetic and excited you feel. It's just the psychology of money. So now, how do you start with an emergency fund? You sit down again and do your calculations. You cannot get away from doing your calculations. Ideally, the emergency fund is to have enough money to cover your expenses for 3 to 6 months. That's a lot of money, right? And it's not as if you have it somewhere in your back pocket. That's why it's called an emergency savings fund, because you are saving up for it. But what you have to bear in mind is this is a long-term or a medium-term goal. You want to be able in maybe, you can decide whether it's 3 years or 4 years, how long it will take for you to build up enough capital. So should you lose your job, if there's an unexpected expense, that you are able to cover it. And the emergency fund must become part of your budget, just like the savings account. So now, When you want to go and make your sums, where do you start? Don't thumb suck and say, maybe, I think. No. Of course, it comes back again to making a budget. You cannot get away from having to have a budget when you think about planning your finances. So there's always the first step that you must do. It is, what is the amount that you need to save? And I know in the beginning it seems impossible. And it's very easy to believe that you don't have the money to do it. But don't start with a huge amount. Start with what you can afford and then gradually increase that amount. And just like your savings account, put it in a separate account. Use a vehicle that you don't use an account where you can't just go and swipe. You can't just take it because this month you haven't been out enough. Now you think you can use that money to actually use it to go to a nice fancy restaurant. No. So make sure that you don't have a debit card attached to your emergency fund. So what is the difference that the emergency fund does? Just imagine yourself when there's a financial crisis and you don't have to worry about how you're going to pay your bills, how you're going to put food on the table, how you're going to get money if you have to go for another job. That is what an emergency fund does for you. It covers your unexpected expenses. And just imagine that sense of freedom, the feeling of empowerment, how uplifted and relaxed you will feel when you don't have the added financial burden when you lost your job. And we live in a time where losing your job is a real possibility. So that is the difference that an emergency fund can do for you. The benefits are endless. The hardest part is to start, because also a huge benefit is that now you don't have to go into debt, because the reality is a lot of us, we were or still are in a situation or in a position that if an emergency happens now, the only alternative is to go and borrow money. And that comes with added cost. That adds to the burden of your debt. Because very often life happens, things flow, and something unexpectedly bad happens. Now you find you have to run around for transport money, for petrol money. You have to run around for transport cost, because these are things that are not part of your budget. But having an emergency fund and working towards that goal, it sets you free financially, it sets you free emotionally, mentally, and psychologically. So you won't have the stress, because financial stress affects you in so many ways that you cannot even see. And very often, lots of people are unpleasant because of lack of sleep and lack of money. So when you have an emergency fund, it will relieve you of your stress. But the important thing is, when do you start? As soon as possible. How much do you need? 3 to 6 months salary. How do you get to that point? You start with what you have as soon as you can, and you add on to that. And understand, this is a medium-term goal. It's not an overnight thing. It's not something that's going to happen tonight when you decide, I'm going to start saving for my emergency fund. And make sure that you can easily access it, but easily access it in such a way that then when you need the money, it can be released within 24 hours. But you must need to go through a process to get it. Not so easily that you can just swipe it with your debit card. And again, this will require discipline. It's nothing about money is automatic. We need to understand that getting your finances in order is not automatic. You need to sit, make your calculations, plan your things, stick to the budget, and most of all, be disciplined, but enjoy the journey. And that is the key to how you start saving towards your emergency fund.